Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Channel Vision editor Gerald Baldino here, and today we're with Teli, a leading provider of wholesale VoIP and communications APIs. Joining us today is Teli's CRO, Scott Navratil. Over the next hour, we'll explore selling programmable APIs in the channel, covering the opportunity at hand and how resellers can benefit from Teli's offerings. Please stay tuned for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A portal located at the bottom of the Zoom platform. Now, to kick things off, let's turn the webinar over to Scott for an introduction and an overview of programmable VoIP APIs. Scott?
Awesome. Thanks, Gerald. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of this busy day to spend some time with us and talk about what we consider to be a pretty important subject in the communications world. I also want to give thanks to the Channel Vision team who helped coordinate this and did all the broadcasting to let everybody know that we're going to be talking about this today. So we're excited to have you all here, and today we're going to cover quite a bit of things, quite a few things. I think one of the things that we want to talk about is, really give you an idea of what programmable APIs are. We'll talk a little bit about the programmable API market. And then we'll talk a little bit about just some tips and tricks on how to identify potential programmable API customers and some discussion points that you might want to consider when you're out there trying to pitch programmable API to your customers. Then we will talk a little bit about Teli. I know that a lot of times you get on these webinars and it's pretty much a 1-hour commercial about the company that's sponsoring it, but our goal today is really kind of give you an understanding of what it is and how it can help your business as a communications agent reseller. So we'll have just a little bit of time at the end to talk about who Teli is and what we're doing and how we can help you. And then, as Gerald said, we'll have that Q&A right at the end. So I do have some resources for on my team that will be here as well. So if you have any questions regarding the technical components of an API, or I've got one of my sales members on the call who will also maybe talk about some of the use cases and what he's actually seeing out there in the trenches on a day-to-day basis selling programmable APIs. So we'll get started. I think the first part here, if my computer screen is working, is to move. Yep, got past that. So we're going to get into really what is a programmable API. For the most people that are on this call, a programmable API may be new. In fact, we've got some feedback that a lot of people who are out there, VARs, resellers, and even agents aren't really familiar with what programmable API is. They've definitely seen it in the market space. They've heard of some companies that are out there pushing it pretty hard, but really not sure what it is and how they can, how their business can benefit from offering. So, one of the most important things is that the programmable API is not something that's going to replace your existing IP communication businesses. So if you're out there selling UCaaS, wholesale SIP trunking, data, all that type of stuff, programmable API, it's just another revenue stream for you. And ideally, it's going to complement what you're already doing with your CPaaS. So, that's real important. So, I think what we're seeing right now, especially over the last year with COVID, is that a lot of companies who were selling, the programmable, not the programmable, but the traditional SIP products, VoIP, messaging and fax and so forth, they've seen potentially a drop in those revenue opportunities because the companies that they're normally selling to, everybody's remote. So, it's one of those things where we know a lot of our resellers have some concerns about revenue streams and a drop in business. So I think this is the perfect time to look at programmable API as a way to supplement what you're currently doing. So onto what it actually is, it's real simple. I think most everybody on the call probably understands what an API is. So, really it's just a way to interface with a system or retrieve information to perform a function. That function could be, placing a call, receiving a call, sending a text message, receiving a text message, playing a video, looking up, geodata, doing a financial transaction. For what we're doing, it's actually pretty, we're Teli's focused more in the communications, the voice, messaging, and fax space. But I mean, an API, programmable APIs are, there's so many things that you can do with them. But it's pretty simple what it is, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes about how it compares to traditional SIP trunking and so forth. But it's just a simple, it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 lines of code. It's that simple. Moving on, I think there's a slight delay here. So one of the things I think is going to surprise quite a few people on this call is literally how big this market is. This is a pre-COVID numbers. This was a forecast that was done a couple of years ago, but the programmable API space was forecasted in 2021 to be at least $230 billion. So huge, huge potential. And I think for those out there who are kind of just had an epiphany about the size of the space, there's definitely room for everybody. So the key is to start coming up with a strategy to go get a piece of that pie. So and it is growing. It's got fantastic growth year over year, 20%. Some of the driving factors, potentially for this crowd is, how it, really, plays to the communication space. And we'll get that into that just a little bit, but a real big part of that is the overall user experience. And I think that's going to be key over the next, several years into the next decade is really, those who have the best user experiences are going to have the best success. Operating services and over the internet, right? We all know that the government's deregulating or breaking down the PSTN. So, most businesses that are out there, the ones that are remaining, I don't know what that number is, it's probably, at least 40% of the businesses out there in the U.S. Are still on old, analog phone systems. So they're all going to be having to migrate over to an IP type telephony service, whether that's VoIP or, maybe a programmable API through an application. Machine to machine. And, the big part, I think that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more here is the share that really is has the fastest growth and is taking up the largest percentage of the programmable API space. And right now, if you look at overall messaging, it actually is the largest segment at 33%. Now, there may be some people on the call who work for some of my competitors. There's a lot of actual companies that do offer programmable APIs. There's at least a half a dozen in the communication space for voice and messaging. Of course, everybody knows that Twilio is the elephant in the room. They're the big player, and I think you'd be shocked if you knew what their market valuation was just from the spaces that they're playing in. And of course, Teli plays in the same space for the messaging and the voice stuff. But you also see that there's also a lot of opportunity, for API programmable APIs in the payment sector, WebRTC, content delivery, machine to machine, Internet of Things, location APIs, applications that can pull geodata, processing payments and so forth. So I think that you'll realize there's, a lot of the stuff that you're doing on a day-to-day basis is actually being handled through a programmable API. Now, I'll say there's that disclaimer at the bottom that, all these logos are definitely copyrighted and trademarked. Anybody who's been in the space for a while knows that, these brands are very, very prestigious and very well protected. I didn't put in Disney because I didn't want to get an email from them that I used it in a PowerPoint presentation. So, but, most of the stuff that you're doing, chances are, that transaction, if it was on Best Buy or if you're doing stuff in Slack, if you're ordering Uber Eats or ordering a Lyft, whatever that may be, chances are there's a very strong component of that transaction was done through programmable API. And then I wanted to take a little bit of time to just give you kind of a quick comparison, from what a VoIP API or programmable API is and how it compares to the SIP trunking. We've all, I think everybody in the channel space is familiar with traditional VoIP and SIP trunking. And so, I threw this up here just to add a little bit of contrast of how the two things are different. They act and behave in very similar ways. As far as, I think the APIs don't necessarily require as much development resources. Whereas if you're really trying to deploy a pretty strong SIP platform, you're going to need SIP engineering. people with VoIP experience, and so that may or may not make that development a little more difficult than the programmable API. But for the most part, programmable APIs are actually pretty easy to deploy. The capacity, that's always a big thing in the SIP world. How many channels do you have? What's the maximum capacity of an asterisk server, 3CX or FreeSwitch? And so, with programmable APIs, I mean, technically there really is no limit to the number of concurrent sessions that you can actually have at any given time. But I do have the caveat in there that, even though the programmable API really isn't limited, the traditional limits are imposed by your upstream providers. So maybe it's your service provider or your carrier, your CLX, or anybody else that you're getting the service from. So they may have some constraints and limitations that might throttle how much capacity you can push on a programmable API. Cost-wise, they're about the same, depending on the volume. Obviously, there's always volume discounts that factor into things, and where you're sending your traffic to, what type of traffic is it? Messaging, MMS, SMS? Is it a standard call, toll free, etc. Price points, they're about the same. As a reseller, so you definitely have pretty good revenue opportunities. If you can take a programmable API into existing SIP customers, they're not going to have sticker shock. So another benefit on the API side is there's traditionally no licensing. So apart from the open source, VoIP platforms out there, in particular Asterix and all the flavors of Asterix, free PBX and Elastics, and I forgot the other one. Used to be PBX on a Flash. I think it's Incredible PBX now. There is no licensing, and so that's a pretty strong component for a lot of people who are deploying large volume, engagements with their customers. On the SIP side, again, other than the open source, there are some, especially on the enterprise stuff, there's definitely some signaling that you have to contend with. So, and then finally, integration potential, and I think that's the thing that's really a huge differentiator in the platform, is that these customers that you're going to approach, and that's the key. We'll talk about that in a second. You probably already got a lot of customers who are candidates for programmable API. Chances are they're probably already using a programmable API and they're just buying it from someone else. So, but the advantage here is that basically there is unlimited integration potential. They can customize a programmable API to do exactly what they want it to really kind of set their application apart from their competitions and really improve that customer experience. As opposed to SIP, where the handling of the voice and the messaging sits in a separate environment outside of that customer's application that they built. So, and then just for fun, I threw on here kind of a comparison between what an actual call through our call API looks like versus a traditional SIP invite. And so I don't think they're, and I think the disclaimer there, right, is that all of this can look completely different depending on the provider that you're using, how you got your SIP configured and so forth. But just kind of throw it there for fun. So hopefully you found it interesting. So we're going to move into now selling programmable API solutions. I think this is the key, is that, okay, well, you kind of understand what it is. You kind of think, okay, yeah, you can do a lot of the same things that you can do with traditional VoIP, but really, how do I go out there and find these customers? How do I, find a way to, make additional revenue off of this new channel? So we'll look into it a little more deeper, but I mean, the big thing here is that you're really trying to complement what you're already doing. This could be a separate or a new channel, which can generate more usage, more voice usage, messaging, fax usage, and of course, if you partner with some of the other API platform developers, if you're maybe doing something with, like I said, with maybe it's Stripe, for payments, or maybe you're doing something with Google Maps, right? There's definitely a lot more opportunities for you to really create a new and potentially larger revenue stream. If you're an agent, then traditionally, then you can just look at more revenue coming in from commissions and of course usage spends, right? So this is another way to increase usage. What I found, and through my discussions with some of our partners, is that once that deployment, of course they're a partner with their customer, but really once the PBX has been deployed, once the circuits are in place for fiber, maybe they're doing some consulting and managed services. pretty much once that's done, that's pretty much it. It kind of stays the same. And so what this does, this potentially could, just slightly increase that usage, that revenue, or it could double it, or it could more situations could potentially triple it, depending on the customer that you're actually that you're talking to. So also the next part of this is that you're going to build a stronger client relationship. So where they used to look at you for being just a commodity telephone service provider, and data, for those customers who are doing just those things. Now you're really moving into a realm that really is going to help your customers improve their revenue. You're going to help them sell more services and improve the customer experience with their customers. So that really becomes more important to them. And so I think that that's going to be something that potentially could really increase the relationships with your existing customers and, of course, build new relationships with new customers. Consulting opportunities. So another thing that you can do, and I did mention that programmable APIs for the most part are fairly simple. I'm not a developer, so that's a bold statement on my part. I've never had to write a programmable API or integrate one, but from what I hear, it's actually not as bad as trying to do some other stuff. So, but there are opportunities for you to work with customers to look at what a programmable API deployment is. And then, of course, you can generate some additional revenue with some consulting fees. And, here at Teli, we definitely have an entire team of developers. We've got a lot of resources. One is actually on the call. And so you'll see this later on, that this is one of our differentiators, that we can actually work with you to help your customers deploy these APIs and make sure that they're done right, they're done quickly. And of course, anything with consulting, right, that seems to be traditionally higher margin than just usage-based revenue. And then for a lot of people who are playing in the space, there's definitely a big change coming. In fact, the big AT&T 10 DLC rollout's going to be sometime around March 1st. But the big thing here is that there's going to be some changes. And so, the ability to, receive callbacks on the messaging numbers that are being used, whether it's toll free or long code, is really critical. You can use a programmable API to actually set up call forwarding or set up intelligent call routing, whether, directly in that customer's application or in their contact center environment. With shared shortcode going away, right? And of course, shortcode, you don't have the ability to receive inbound calls. You can't call that number back. You can respond back to it in text, but there's potential opportunity with that as well. So that's what's in it for you. We'll look at just a couple of cases of what it really takes to be successful. And I think the big part here is, in order for you to be successful in any sales engagement, you really got to understand not only what your products and services do, but also what your customer is looking for, right? What is their product? What is the service that they're offering to their customers? You got to take the time to understand that. You don't want to just look at how many employees they have. So how many seats do you have? Okay, what type of IVR do you want? Do you need call forwarding? That traditional type of engagement. This is the part that's real critical, is to go back, and if you haven't done that already, go back to your existing customer list and really spend some time understanding what they do. And what you'll find is that chances are quite a few of them are a SaaS company, right? They offer some kind of software as a service or some kind of an application. And what we're going to talk about a little bit in this particular market, right? So you've got a customer, they're a SaaS company, maybe they manufacture a point of sale system, or they do some kind of a CRM, or they do, Airbnb is a perfect example. Timeshare, or some kind of rental environment, mobile apps, etc. Hospitality is a pretty big market. The POS environment is actually pretty strong. And this is one of those things where you engage with a restaurant, you sign up, you opt in to receive their messages, and then they keep you up to date when there's promotions, alerts, when your table's ready, when you're and so forth. So hospitality and travel is pretty strong. Do you have any customers that fit into that segment? Of course, healthcare. Healthcare is huge right now. Everybody knows that, especially telemedicine. But healthcare specific CRMs, those CRMs need to basically tell you, or to remind you when your appointment is. We'll let you know your prescription ready, to let you know that, hey, your telemedicine session is starting. So, do you have any customers that fit into the healthcare market? Maybe they're pharmacies, maybe they're dentist offices, orthodontic offices. If I said that correctly. And so these are huge opportunities for any company that makes some kind of an application or platform in the healthcare space, would be someone to have that discussion. Retail, e-commerce. I think that's kind of obvious. A lot of the people that were on the logo screen a few slides back. That's what they do. You can basically manage, get rewards updates. Starbucks, perfect example. I get a notification from Starbucks every other day that said, "Hey, today's Wednesday. You get 2 stars for every dollar you spend." And a lot of that's pushed through the notification, but that also can be done through text messaging. It can be done through, you can do it through email. You can actually do outbound calling. There's a lot of different ways to handle it. But retail's pretty strong. Fintech, similar type of environments. I'll move through these kind of quick. I think you all get the point. Education, of course, big thing right there, and I get those in my district where my son goes to school is, when there's a snow day, right, there's going to be a closure or there's going to be a COVID a notification. So there's quite a few opportunities to engage with education all the way from K through 12 all the way to higher ed, of how they can implement programmable APIs to, send out alerts, notifications, even promotions. So something to look at. And then course government. So possible talking points for those customers that are SaaS companies. One of the things you can do is that basically, look at their infrastructure. How many services are they actually getting from third parties that require additional hardware, additional commitments, and so forth? Maybe some of those functions can be consolidated into an API-based environment. So reduce development costs, cutting out expensive proprietary platforms that would provide the same functions as a programmable API. That's really more at your discretion, right? You don't want to remove something that you're already making money from, but it's something that might be able to complement it. Improve the customer experience is really critical for programmable API. And then, of course, that was it. Okay. Then you want to look at your customers who are already using programmable APIs. So the big benefit there is that they've already got, the sales already been done. Whether it was done from you or your competitor, they've already bought into the benefits of using programmable APIs. As a reseller or an agent, it's usual that same type of discussion. You got to tread lightly, but you really want to find out, are you really happy with your current provider? And really look to those particular areas where there might be opportunities. I'll get to one that's actually pretty important that we see. Lower rates, that can be the case, but sometimes it may not save them a lot of money, right? So you have to look at other ways that you might be able to engage yourself with that customer for that business. API functionality and features. Look at what they're doing. Look at your API partners like Teli. Look at our API offering and see, well, maybe there's some additional features or functions that we have that their other provider doesn't, that might provide a benefit to their business. So you can investigate that. This is one thing that we hear quite a bit, and a lot of the companies that are out there providing programmable APIs, they have, from what I can tell, pretty decent service. They offer a lot of the similar functions and features to the core IP communications group, but I think the big thing here is the complaints that we get from our customers is that the customer support that they get from these other providers is lacking. That they don't get the love, they don't get the personal attention unless they're spending a material amount of money with that provider. So you might be able to offer them better customer support. Developer resources. This is another thing that we hear quite a bit that our competition lacks in, is that it's kind of like one size fits all for everybody. But for particular customers, especially larger customers or in the enterprise space, they definitely want to have dedicated developer resources. So that's something you can discuss with your Teli sales rep, and we can work with you to identify the right resource for that customer's engagement or their project. So move on to the last segment. The one thing that we're seeing quite a bit of activity with, and this is actually a pretty fun one, is startup. There's a lot of businesses that have come online in the last, I'd say, last several years, and some of these are 100% based on APIs to other parties. So all of their all their transactions are through an API, all of their geocoding is through an API, all of their messaging, voice, and fax is through an API. Really all they had to do was employ a set of developers to stand up an application server and a customer interface, and they're making a lot of money. So if you look at some of the venture seeding that's been going on over the last 12 months, I'm sure if you do a search for it online, you'll find that a lot of that is going into these type of companies, these API-based companies. So, and if you're interested in knowing one of those, I can after the presentation, I can get you in touch with our marketing resources here. We can get you some of those, some of that data. So faster time to market. So traditionally, when a company's trying to deploy, they're really trying to put all the pieces together, trying to get their data in place, they're trying to get their phone system in place, they're trying to get all their binds up to all their upstream carriers, and then they're trying to, get everything, that depending on what their application is, right? It's just one of those things that's very, very time consuming. If you have good, API resources, or you're contracting with someone who does, much faster time to market with an all API based type of platform. Low upfront capital costs. We talked about no licensing. You don't need a bunch of external IP infrastructure, voice infrastructure, messaging infrastructure, and so forth. You've got, as long as you've got the bandwidth and you've got the application server scaled in at capacity, whether it's hosted or on-prem, really your upfront costs are pretty minimal. So that's why you'll see a lot of new startups going this API route. Better customer engagement experience. So out of the gate, they're going to have a lot more success when they have a better user experience when nobody knows who they are. And of course, it comes back to the upfront capital costs. So the amount of costs that it actually gets, that it takes to get their business up and running, over the long run, their return on investment is much better because all the revenue that they generate is not going back to pay off all their capital investments. So ROI is pretty strong. So that kind of covers the, how do you sell it? What do you look for? Is it a SaaS company that you're not currently selling it to, or is it a SaaS company that's already got programmable APIs, or even startups? Those are the strong segments that I think they'll probably provide the most success for you. And if you have any additional questions on that, we can sync up after the presentation and give you some guidance on how to go after those a little bit more in detail. So here's that part where we talk about who we are and what we do. I'll go through just a few slides of why Teli is an established leader in programmable API and wholesale SIP trunking. We are all of our traffic is processed on tier 1 carrier network and networks. We are directly integrated with all of the messaging gateway providers. We are a Salmos 800 REST board. We are integrated with at least, I think we're up to 3 of the nationwide tier 1 CLECs. And so, we have a large footprint, 12,000 plus rate centers and growing. We have our own internal 60 gigabit IP backbone. And then that basically plugs into our carriers' backbones, which are at least 100 gig. So very, very scalable. So no matter what size of enterprise opportunity that you discover for programmable API, we're not going to hit a scalability issue. Dedicated API developer resources, which I've talked about a little bit. Aggressive API usage rate. So this is a thing that's pretty important, right? Especially when you're out there and you're trying to displace another programmable API provider. We've got very, very competitive pricing, not only for the wholesale SIP trunking, but also programmable APIs. So, if you've got volume business, or if even if you're just talking to a customer who's just getting started, in most cases, we can give you much better usage rates for the API than our competitors do. based on feedback that we've seen from actual customer use cases and of course our own research. So always, this is our motto. We always challenge you to challenge us to beat your current provider's best rates for the API usage. We do pay very competitive affiliate agent commissions in SPIF. In fact, my most recent research says that some of the largest players in the programmable API space don't really even offer direct affiliate agent commissions. So there's a roundabout way of how they do that. That may have changed. I'm not sure. Don't quote me to that. But if your customer is using an API, a programmable API provider that is not going to pay an agent commission, then obviously it's your best interest to displace them with one who pays you. So that's where you make money. So something to think about. And then we also provide an award-winning reseller portal to manage everything. It literally is. It was designed from the ground up for resellers, fully private label, 3-tier, three layers of how you can manage your sub accounts. And of course, we do provide separate sub-account API tokens, which is something that's also pretty rare in our space. In fact, our programmable, our award-winning API actually won the Channel Vision VSA Spotlight last year. So we're pretty excited about that. But that's where you kind of manage everything, where you set your sub-accounts up. If you're managing directly or if you want to hand them off, we'll take care of them. But, I think once you actually see it, it's pretty impressive. So. And this is a little bit about our particular API offering. I mean, there's well over 200 different API functions you can do with the Teli API. I list a few of those things here. If you actually go to, you can get it off of our website. It's teli.net. If you scroll down, you'll actually see a link to this page, but you can actually go through and look at our API documentation and see all the different things that you can do. And I think that's important if you're seriously considering using Teli for this, is to really look at those, because you see some of those call functions, those smart IVR routing tree that you can build for contact centers. You really understand what is possible with it, and that might help you create some angles that you'll use to discuss with your customers. So it is an award-winning API as well. Back in, many years ago, we won Best of Show at the IT Expo for our API. Now, on I think it was the second or third slide, I showed Twilio. Twilio definitely is a big player in the space. And I think it's really important to understand that, Teli uses the same for the call APIs. We use the same backend infrastructure that Twilio does. So we offer the same backend infrastructure for call processing. We also use the same exact carriers. In fact, I think we have a couple interconnects that they don't have. So really what we're offering is, and yet I have yet to find an engagement where we're actually higher priced than Twilio. So, we're going to pay you commission. We're going to usually beat their pricing. The customer's going to be rest assured that their traffic is on a tier 1 network, the same tier 1 network, using the same API switching architecture that Twilio uses. But they're going to get you as their agent, and they're going to get us for customer care and API development resources. So that's really the big differentiator, and that's really the reason that we're seeing a lot of Twilio customers migrate over to Teli. Another important thing to note here on this comparison, Twilio is discontinuing their faxing API later this year. So if you've got customers that are considering Twilio for API-based faxing, or maybe they're already using them, there's a huge opportunity right now to help them start planning for the discontinuance of Twilio's fax product. So I think that's it. So I'll hand it back to Gerald, and we can entertain some questions from the audience and go from there.
All right. Scott, thank you very much for the great presentation there. Yeah, let's open the floor up to questions here. As a reminder, to submit questions, just send them through the Q&A portal at the bottom of the platform. To start, Scott, why don't you tell us where is Teli based out of? Tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah, Teli is actually based in Denver. Surprisingly enough, there's quite a few other large telecom companies that are based here. So we're in Denver. We've got offices all around the world. We've got offices all over the United States as well. Primarily, we do a lot of interconnects and switching here in Denver, but we've also got Las Vegas, and then we've also we're going to be turning up 2 new POPs I think one in Florida and one in California here shortly. So
Fantastic, fantastic. Question here: how do we engage with a channel rep?
there's lots of ways to do that. A lot of the team is actually on this call, but we have live chat through our website. You can always call into the Teli main number, which we'll have here. In fact, I'll put that right up so you can see that. And then you can, of course, email us. And, hopefully at some point, everybody that is going to some of the trade shows, when they start back up, we're at most of the major we'll shows nationwide. So we'll be exhibiting at the Channel Vision show, IT Expo, LeadsCon, Affiliate Summit, AstraCon. I mean, you'll find us, right? And some of you may have already seen us at some of these shows.
Okay, great. Next question: where is your API documentation located?
Oh, yeah, that's actually back on that slide. That was a couple of one. I'll go back. Let's see here. Wait for it. There it is. It's at right in the top paragraph, apidocs.teliapi.net. There's also a link on the teli.net webpage. If you scroll down a little bit under the API video, you'll actually see that. In that video, there is a video there that gives you a 2 to 3 minute kind of walkthrough of some of the features and functionality you can do with the Teli API. But the easiest place to get it is on the website.
Okay, thanks. Next question: how do you deal with providers like Spectrum and Verizon that won't allow you to use an outside API?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I have a good response to that. So I think most of the stuff, I guess if you're, we are directly interconnected with all of the carriers, right? So we get most of our transport through the Lex. And then, of course, if you're trying to send a text message, it goes through the two SMS gateway providers. So the APIs would connect to our switching infrastructure. Then that's typically how we get that customer. We get the communications delivered. I don't know if that answers the question. That could be maybe a potential, if they're looking for a little bit more deeper response on that, then we can get their information and talk with them directly about that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. How much does it cost to create an account?
There is no cost. In fact, it's free. You can sign up right on our website. In fact, when you sign up for a test account, you can even request. We can put some play money in there for you to go explore by DID, set up trunks, and pass some traffic. So there's nothing to set up an account. And the other thing too is that we don't have long-term contracts. We don't have minimum commitments and no setup fees. So.
Okay, thanks. And maybe talk a little bit more about your national presence. Do you have any plans for a POP in the Northeast?
I think we do. I think New York or Massachusetts is going to be, I saw that on the deployment list. So probably something here. I don't know if it'll be towards the end of this year, but it's, maybe Q2, Q3.
Okay, great. So definitely something to keep our eye out looking forward. Next question: can you talk a little bit more about your sign up process? In terms of signing up, funding with a credit card or that sort of thing.
It's all pretty straightforward and easy. So you go to the link on the website, you create an account, you have the option to put in a credit card, and then once your account's activated, you have if you want to preload with some funds, we'll put some test credits in there. Then you can go in and actually explore and play with it.
Okay, excellent.
We also support PayPal, so if you once your account's established, you can pay with PayPal. We also support Bankwire. Larger customers, we do support postpaid terms. So for those people that have much higher spends, higher volumes, that's definitely something that's available to them as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for the overview. It looks like questions are slowing down a little bit. I think we could probably wrap up here. Big thank you, Scott, to the entire team over at Teli, and to all of you for attending this event. To access this webinar on demand, please head over to channelvisionmag.com/webinars and keep an eye out for a follow-up email from Channel Vision. Thanks. Stay safe out there, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.